life is not always the way you want it to be. It will not always go the way you want. Your prayers will not always be answered. Your expectations will not always be met. Your desires will not always come to pass. In the midst of this complex duo of yes and no, your ability to know how to manage the good times and the bad times is the key to living a life of contentment. And that is what we are going to talk about in this broadcast, the power of contentment. Stay tuned and I'll be right back. The power of contentment. It is very important you understand what contentment is. It is simply the state of satisfaction. But the question is, what is satisfaction? If you don't understand what satisfaction is, you may not understand the power of contentment. And today I would like us to look at what is really contentment and how do you manage unmet expectations? How do you manage unanswered prayers? How do you manage when things don't go your way or when things don't align with your plans and objectives? In the Holy Scriptures, in 1 Timothy chapter number 6, verse 6 and 7, the great apostle Paul made a very, very powerful statement. He said this, and I quote, "Godliness with contentment is great gain." Great gain? He could have just said gain. No, he said it is great gain. Godliness with contentment is great gain. Then he went further in verse number 7. He said, why? Because we brought nothing into the world, and we will take nothing out of the world. That is a very, very important statement. We brought nothing into the world, and we will take nothing out of the world. And he links this particular philosophy with the initial concept. Why is it connected? Because to be content in this world, you need a higher power to help you. You need a type of divine to assist you, because it is not easy with your human understanding to go through bad times and still be content, or unanswered prayers and still be content, which means there must be a higher philosophy by which you live your life to be able to interpret in your life unmet expectations and understand that when things don't happen the way you wanted them to happen, there may be a higher reason that you really don't understand. Because if we do not understand the law or the power of contentment, in other words, that state of satisfaction, if we don't understand it, now contentment doesn't mean everything is going your way. No. It means even when things are not going your way, what is your state? You can still have a state of satisfaction even if you're expecting better outcomes in your life. The law or the power of contentment is not about having things the way you want them to be. No, it is about the state of your mind, the state of your heart. When things don't go your way, but you understand you can still be satisfied, you can still be joyful, you can still love people, you can still do what you're expected to do, not just because you are happy, but because you understand certain laws of life. One of the things we have lost in this generation is contentment. And you see, when you lack contentment in your life, there are three things that happen. Number one, you become a very complaining person. You complain a lot because you expect certain things to happen and they did not happen that way. Simply put, unmet expectations. So you complain. It was supposed to be here, but it is there. You complain. I was supposed to go left, but I went right. You complain. Someone was supposed to do X, but the person did Y. You complain. The absence of contentment is the mother of all complaints, because then you have connected your joy to an event. So if the event does not occur or does not happen, guess what? Your joy is gone, stolen, or deformed. Not necessarily because you did not do the right thing, but simply because your contentment is actually being sustained by only the good things that happen. Your contentment is being sustained only when your prayers are answered. Your contentment is being sustained only when you have a testimony, if I can use that word. But is it supposed to be so? So when things don't go according to your prayers, according to your testimony, according to your desire, you begin to complain. Complaining is a culture for people who don't understand the power of contentment. The second thing about contentment is when you don't have it, you become very ungrateful. A lot of times you see people will interact with you. They may not do everything you wanted them to do. You may expect the person to give you $1,000 and the person gives you $500 because the expectation of 1,000 was not met. It is very easy to become ungrateful. In other words, you will not even have the energy to appreciate the 500 you were given because you are expecting more. When you expect more and get less, the only thing that can secure your state of mind is contentment. Otherwise, you will live in ingratitude. You would not know how to say thank you to people because they did not do exactly what you wanted them to do, when you wanted them to do it, and how you wanted them to do it. When contentment is absent, ingratitude becomes the common denominator. The third thing lack of contentment will do in your life is it will make you covetous. Contentment doesn't mean your life is okay the way it is. Contentment doesn't mean everything you desire, all your objectives have been met. Contentment doesn't even mean that you are living a fully successful life. No. But if you don't learn to be content, I love again what the Apostle Paul said. He said, I've learned to do what I'm supposed to do, to be content when I have much and to be content when I have little. If your character or your attitude is being controlled by what you have or what you don't have, it is a sign of immaturity. If you are good to people only when things are going according to plan in your life, and when things don't go according to plan, you become caustic and rusty with people, it is a sign of immaturity. If you smile at people only when you have good news, and when you have bad news, you frown and you sulk at everybody, it is a sign of immaturity. Contentment, again, doesn't mean it is all well. It simply means in that state, I still have to thank God I am alive, so I'm content. In that state, I still have to appreciate people who were there for me, even if they did not meet up to my expectations. Because all over the world, there are people who don't even have someone to talk to. There are people who don't even have someone to give them food to eat. You're content, not because you eat properly, but because you even have something to eat. All over the world, there are billions of people who haven't eaten in the last 24 hours. You have eaten. Your complaint is that you ate without XYZ, but at least you had food to eat. Can you be content? Can you be happy? Can you even give thanks to the person who fed you? Can you even appreciate the person who cooked the food? Can you even do something to show that you understand that even if you don't have everything you wanted, but the little you have sustained you, the little you have has taken you this far, and if you can come this far, then you can make further progress. Again, like I said, contentment, when absent, produces covetousness. Because what is covetousness? That strong desire to gain things in your life, listen, at the expense of ethics, values, and your capacity. Let me take that over again. Covetousness is that desire to acquire things at the expense of ethics, morals, values, and your capacity. Lack of contentment is what will make you to complain. Lack of contentment will make you to be ungrateful. Lack of contentment will push you into covetousness. Like I said, it is a strong desire because your self-esteem is so connected to material things that when you don't have them in abundance, you feel like you're a failure. Did Jesus not say a man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possession? Abundance of physical things does not equate to a happy life. It doesn't. Is it possible that you're frustrated? Not because people have not been good to you, not even because God hasn't been good to you, but could it be that you're frustrated because covetousness is trying to push you to get things that you don't even deserve, things that you don't qualify for, things that are bigger than your capacity, things that you even don't need, but you just want to get them to prove to other people that you're successful. Maybe you want to get them as a means of authenticating your low self-esteem. Maybe you need them to secure your insecurities. I don't know why, but covetousness is a very, very interesting thing because it'll push you beyond bounds. It will take you out of your value system. It will take you out of your morals. It will take you out of your capacity. But the question is, why are we not content? One of the reasons we are not content in this generation is comparison. We compare a lot with one another. And when you compare with one another, again, the Apostle Paul says, those who compare themselves amongst themselves are not wise. It is foolishness to compare with other people because a lot of times it is comparison that steals or takes away your contentment. I give an example. You may have a good car. It's wonderful. It's a nice car. It does the job. But because your friend or your colleague just bought a very expensive car, for some strange reasons, you just become uncontented with your own car. You feel like this car is not the best anymore. This car is old. The reason is not your car. The point is you are comparing with another person. Comparison can make you not even appreciate your children. Your son, your daughter is doing well in school. But because your colleague came and said his son or daughter made the first class, suddenly you are no longer content with the academic performance of your children because you're comparing with another person. At times, I've experienced this a lot, and it falls under ingratitude, whereby you talk to people and they regret certain things in their lives. Well, they say something like, if I had traveled to America, if I had traveled to England, if I had traveled to South Africa, my life would not be the way it is. If I had. Wherever they are not content because they think if they had traveled somewhere else, they would have succeeded. My question is, how do you know? In retrospect, you always think the best. At the back of your mind, if I had traveled to America 10 years ago, by now, I would have been so successful. Why is it that, in retrospect, you always think about the best? Why don't you think that if you had traveled to America 10 years ago, you would have been dead by now? Is that not a possibility? Why don't you think that if you had traveled to England 10 years ago, you may have been on drugs now? Why can't you think that? Why can't you think that if I had traveled to Africa 5 years ago, if I had relocated to Africa 5 years ago, I would have been bankrupt by today? Why is it that we always think the best in retrospect? And that is what makes us not to be content. Because when we look back, we always think we would have had the best option, would have had the best experience. Never the case. I spoke with a friend of mine and she was lamenting. Of course, long distance always creates problems. So she was really angry. And she said something like, well, she's regretting why she got married to the man because there's another man, another friend of mine, who is in another country doing very well. And she said, well, that man was even interested in my hand in marriage. If I'd married him, I would have been X, Y, Z. My question is, in retrospect, why do we always think the best? Because you think the grass is always green on the other side, right? And that is what makes us not to experience the power of contentment. We think it would have been better. My question is, and I ask that question as though I'm asking that lady right now, what makes you think that if you had married the other man, you would have still been alive? What criteria did you use to draw that conclusion? I hear this all the time. You look back and you assume if you had done X, it would have been better. And so you are not happy with your current state because you assume It could have been better. Listen, you have no idea. If you had married that man, the marriage could have lasted 2 years. You may have ended up in a mental home. Or maybe the man would have died and you would have been a widow. But because the man is alive today, doesn't necessarily mean that if he had married you, he would still be alive. The forces of life are not a formula. Life is unpredictable. And when you don't learn to appreciate where you are and see how you can improve, because like I said before, contentment doesn't mean you're okay with your current situation. No, it means you understand where you are content in whatever it is, but you seek for ways to improve your life. However, there is an exception. The only exception is if you refuse to commit evil. You cannot look back and say, if I had stolen that money, I would have been rich or wealthy by now. No, you can't do that. That's an exception. The exception to contentment is anything evil, anything that is a crime does not come into the equation. To start with, you cannot be contented in evil. Even if you make money, that money will never give you joy or satisfaction. It is not possible. I say this with a heavy heart because we live in times where people like regretting things without thinking. And that's why you may not be happy, because you think you would have had a better spouse. You are not happy. You think you should have had better children. You should have had a better job. The job you have now, thank God for it. Learn from it. Be content in that job. Learn from it. Improve your skills. And then get a better job. You cannot be grumpy in your current employment just because you don't like certain things. Be contented. Have contentment. In that contentment, receive the wisdom on how to improve your life. If we don't apply the law or the power of contentment, we will always be people who complain, who are ungrateful and covetous, because we will always want to do things that we ought not to do just to push our lives forward, even if it is at the expense of our health, the expense of our families, the expense of our own welfare. We will just push because we are not contented. A lot of times, your problem is not a contentment problem. It is a covetous problem. You are not happy, not because you don't have, but because you just want to keep having. You may say, I don't feel loved. It's not because people don't love you. It is just that you're too entitled. Entitlement will always destroy your contentment all the time, because you will always feel that you deserve people's love. You deserve people's time. You deserve people's resources. You don't deserve anybody's resources. You don't deserve anybody's time. If somebody takes 2 minutes and calls you, appreciate the 2 minutes. You cannot say, well, he called only for 2 minutes and dropped the call. Can't you even appreciate that someone called you for 2 minutes? There are people who for months, nobody calls them. I want us to develop that attitude of contentment. And like the Apostle Paul says, godliness with contentment is great gain. Can we begin to enjoy the great gain and be contented in ourselves? Be contented in your gender. Be contented in your culture. Have some contentment in how far you've come in life, even if you've gone through difficult times. I understand. People have gone through trauma. People have gone through crazy moments. But you're not contented because of the trauma. You're contented because what the trauma has taught you has developed your character. Especially if you've gone through therapy, the experience you have becomes beneficial, not just for you, but you can help other people who are going through similar situations. Then the contentment comes, because now you are an instrument of help for other people. You are an instrument to make the lives of other people better. Can we for once begin to live a life of contentment and not just complain about everything? The sun shines, we complain it is too hot. Rain falls, we complain it is too wet. Winter comes, we complain it is too cold. Can you just enjoy the winter? Get the heater in your house. Keep your house warm. Just enjoy the cold. Be content. Contentment. Because there are certain things, maybe plants or animals that thrive in the winter. You also need them to survive on the earth. The earth is not just for you alone. When the summer comes, it is hot. There are certain animals or vegetation or fruits or even things we eat that do well in the summer. You may not like the heat, but can you understand that other things also need the sunlight to be successful? Don't always complain. It is too wet. It rains every day. Of course, the plants need the water to grow. You want all the plants to die? Be contented that it's sunny. Be contented that it is hot or cold or rainy. Give God glory for everything. Scripture again says, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. Be happy. You went through good times. Praise God. You went through bad times. Okay, fine. You learn from them. So in conclusion, I would like us to get to a point of maturity where rather than complain, we can sit back and ask ourselves, what can I learn from this experience? What lessons can I learn to improve my life? What can I learn so I don't repeat the same mistake again? What can I do to help other people not make the same type of mistake? That is how you approach life, with positivity. You approach life with that particular perspective that helps you to know not only the good that experience brings to your life, but also the potential good it can bring to the lives of other people. Contentment and godliness, great gain. Why? Because that's the only way you can live a satisfied life. In your current state, contentment. Then, what do I do to improve? Contentment doesn't mean staying where you are. No, it means where you are, start from there, be happy with it, and then make progress. If you do that, your life will go in the right direction. And stop looking back and thinking, if I did this, it would have been better. If I married that, it would have been better. If I invested that, it would have been better. Nope. Don't say that, because you don't know. It could have been worse. That's why when something has passed, it has passed. Learn from the past. Make the right decisions in the present and hope for the future. If you do that, then you have a good time. The future is bright and your life will go in the right direction. Thank you again for joining me. God bless you. See you in the next broadcast. Bye-bye.